Great. Well, you're live, Mr. Chair. If you can introduce yourself and call the meeting to order. We do have enough commission members to establish a quorum.
All right, very good. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. And sorry about the slight delay. We'll muddle our way through this here. So I will now call to order the April 9th, 2020 Delta Protection Commission meeting. And so, first of all, again, thank you all for adjusting your schedules to accommodate these uncertain times, and we certainly appreciate that. We know that many of you have had to adjust your schedules accordingly to accommodate this meeting. So right out of the gate, I want to make sure that folks know that as we go through the meeting, and Erik will provide us some additional guidance for us, as we go through the meeting, all the items that we're going to require us to vote will be a roll call vote. So that'll be a little bit cumbersome, but it's required per the executive order that we're operating under. And so there'll be a moment in a minute here where I just want to remind everybody that if for whatever reason you do need to leave, and we know many folks are going to have to leave the meeting before it's over, if you can announce to the group that you are going to be leaving so that we can manage the roll call votes a little bit easier, that would be helpful. So we'll have a moment here shortly where we can, those that are going to have to leave, to let us know so that there's so we can account for that. So with that, we're not going to do a flag, so we don't have a flag. We'll accommodate that next time. So we're going to forego that for the moment. And so to begin with, Stacy, who's serving as our temporary clerk, Stacy Hayden, thank you very much. If you would not, if you'd start by establishing a quorum and doing a roll call. And again, remember, okay, excuse me. And again, remember, we ask that you please keep your phone muted until you're actually going to speak, and then, of course, turn it right back to muted once you've been identified. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you will need to unmute yourself during roll call. I'm going to start now. Chair Oscar Villegas.
Present.
Vice Chair Don Natoli. I'll give everybody just a moment to make sure you unmute. I'm looking for Vice Chair Don Natoli.
Here, on the phone.
Commissioner Chuck Wynn.
Here.
Commissioner Diane Burgess. Again, making sure you're unmuted. Commissioner Diane Burgess. Commissioner Skip Thompson.
Present.
Commissioner Ronald Cott.
Here.
Commissioner Christopher Cabaldon. Making sure you're unmuted, Commissioner Christopher Cabaldon. Commissioner Alan Nakanishi.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Paroli.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Van Lobensells.
Here.
Commissioner Nick Musi. Again, making sure you're unmuted, Commissioner Nick Musi. Commissioner Dan McElhinney.
Hi, this is Dan McElhinney.
Sorry, thank you. Commissioner Jenny Lester Moffitt. Making sure.
Madam Clerk, we've been communicating with both Jenny Lester Moffitt and Brian Bush. They are both on the call but having troubles with their microphones. So if that's been rectified, Commissioners Bush and Lester Moffitt, please chime in, but otherwise we'll take your notes
Hey,
that you sent to us as indication.
Hey, Eric, I will put the phone info in the chat. So they could call in if they would like.
Great,
that'd be
thank you.
helpful. Yeah, Commissioner Cabaldon is also trying to get in and he cannot, so he needs the call-in information as well.
Okay. Should I mark him as present?
Well, yeah, I think just get him the information, I think, or somebody can send him the phone information, probably if it's not already attached.
Okay. Commissioner Nancy Vogel.
Here.
We have Commissioner Brian Bush, as noted by Erik Vink. Then we have ex officio member and assembly member Jim Frazier.
Present.
And ex officio member and Senator Kathleen Galgiani.
And Madam Clerk, I also received a text from Commissioner Burgess, who is also on the phone but having difficulty unmuting herself. So
This is Diane. Can you hear me now?
we sure can. Thank you, Commissioner Burgess.
Thank you.
Hi, and this is Jenny Lester Moffett. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And so, Clerk Hayden, maybe if you could check in again for Brian, Commissioners Bush, Cabaldon, and Musi, just to establish if they're indeed on the phone.
Okay. Making sure everybody's here and unmuted, double checking for Commissioner Christopher Cabaldon.
If somebody,
Double check.
If somebody
I'm
can
sorry.
send me the call-in information, I can text it to him as we're proceeding here.
Double checking on Commissioner Nick Musi. And double checking on Commissioner Brian Bush.
Here.
Great. Just tallying one moment. Mr. Chair, from what I can tell, we have 13 commissioners plus one ex officio member.
All right. I think Commissioner Cabaldon is still trying to get on. Is someone able to send him the call-in information?
Yes, I will do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. So first of all, I want to give a special welcome to, we have a few new commissioners, so thank you for bearing with us. Jim Paroli is a trustee of the Reclamation District 2030, which is McDonald Island, and he's a Stockton resident. So, Mr. Paroli, thank you very much for joining us. Nancy Vogel, the designated alternate for the California Natural Resources Agency Secretary Wade Crowfoot. So thank you, Nancy, for joining us as well. And we also have a new ex officio commissioner, member Jim Frazier, Assembly Member Jim Frazier. So welcome to the three of you for joining us this afternoon. Are there any comments by any of the new commissioners? Right, I don't hear any at the moment. Eric, I'm assuming that nothing's come up on your screen that anybody needs to, or anybody wants to make a comment? Right, so given that, so what we're going to ask folks to do is to make sure that you identify yourself before you speak, for everybody else to know who's talking, and also for Stacy to be able to record who the speaker is. We're going to make sure, it's a little bit clunky, but we're going to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak. So as the items come before us, we will take commissioner comments, and then we will also make sure that the public has an opportunity to comment as well. So Eric, I know you wanted to share a few sort of procedural things, but you've also been notifying the public that in the event that there are things they wanted to share with the commission, that those items would be, if possible, sent to you in advance. You received some comments. So given that we're at item 3 under public comment, did you want to share what's been provided with your office at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Erik Vink with the commission staff. We did have written comments submitted by several individuals who are on the phone, joining the meeting by phone, so they will present their comments verbally at the appropriate time. There was a third comment received very similar to the 2 people who are phoning in. We'll record that for the record at the time. We won't read the full extent of the comment, but it's very similar to the ones that will be presented verbally at that point in the agenda. But that was all that we received, and as we get to each agenda item, of course, there will be an opportunity for any members of the public participating by phone or via the Skype meeting to be recognized and to offer comment. So that's the way it will work moving forward.
All right, very good. Are there any comments regarding that by any members of the commission? All right, seeing none, then we will move to item 4. This is something that I asked Erik to put on the agenda. It's the chair's report on the Delta Stewardship Council activities. I know Skip Thompson, who was chair last year, did a good job of keeping us posted at the Delta Protection Commission in terms of the activities occurring on the Delta Stewardship Council on a regular basis. But I thought it would be best to have a standing item on the agenda as an opportunity to share what is happening at the Delta Stewardship Council. As many of you probably know, the chair of the Delta Protection Commission serves a 2-year appointment on the Delta Stewardship Council, and it's hard to believe time has passed so quickly. I'm already in my 2nd calendar year of serving in that role. So what I wanted to do is just share a handful of things that I think are pertinent to the work that we do, and I can go through them very quickly. I've asked Erik to just set aside 5 minutes on the agenda. For those who haven't seen, most recently, a few days ago, Governor Newsom appointed Daniel Zingali to the Delta Stewardship Council. It appears he's going to be replacing Ken Weinberg on the council, and I believe that goes into effect immediately as the terms, Mr. Weinberg's term has expired. Next item, the Delta Levy Investment Strategy from 2018. This is something we've been tracking very closely, and many of the Protection Commission members have been actively involved in that conversation. As it moved into the rulemaking process, obviously there's a timeline of 12 months in which that process needs to complete. It did not appear that was going to be happening, so the rulemaking process has been placed on ice temporarily. Since 2018, there's been new elevation imaging that's become available, and that could potentially change the risk maps that are being used. MBK will be looking at all of the data sources and working with staff, so that process will begin. I think it's underway as we speak. The next item I wanted to share, as you probably are aware, the Stewardship Council is very science heavy, and there is a lead scientist that operates much of the work under the Stewardship Council. That position, the term is expiring, and so there's been interviews occurring. I believe the lead scientist recommendation will be coming to the board for consideration at our April meeting, so that'll be happening this month. Also under the science program, and Supervisor Natoli will appreciate this, the work that has been occurring at the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District on the northern end of the Delta. They've been working very closely with the Delta Stewardship Council for discharge investigations, and that's been a coordinated investigation largely to monitor water quality downstream. And so that work is continuing. It's going well, and I've actually asked the lead scientist to come to the Regional Sanitation District Board to provide an update, because I think most of that will be relatively new to many of the commissioners. So that will be happening very soon. And then the last item I wanted to share, and many of you probably got a copy of it. If you haven't, let me know, or Eric, we can get it to the commissioners, and that is a draft public participation plan. The Delta Stewardship Council, there was a lot of conversation about ways in which the public needs to engage more in the work that the Stewardship Council is doing. And so over the course of the last year, staff has worked to put together a public participation plan, and that was released, I believe, a few weeks ago, if not, and that's out for review and comment. And so I think it's in large part to ensure better ways of continuously looking at public engagement processes. So that is, in summary, what the Stewardship Council has been doing, unless there are any questions from any members of the Commission. Are there any questions at this point?
Oscar, this is Don Natoli. I just want to thank you for the update and certainly for apprising the Commission of some of the activities of the Stewardship Council, but certainly for your your role and a very strong role as the chair of the Commission in presence of, obviously, of your fellow council members on the council. But thanks for the update, and I appreciated the reference to some of the work that the Stewardship Council is doing in concert with some of the work that's been going on at the regional sanitation facility, and I think impacts certainly that will improve water quality in the river, but I think also help inform some of the science about before and after some of the planned improvements come online. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, then we will move to item 5, which is Commissioner comments or announcements. It's an opportunity for Commission members. Yes.
Hi, this is Susan Tatai, and I just wanted to let you know I'm listening in on the meeting, and you gave an excellent summary of Stewardship Council activities. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Susan, and you're welcome. Thank you. All right.
Hi, and this is Martha. Sorry. Hi, this is Martha Esch. Also, I just joined the meeting about 30 seconds ago.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. And a reminder, there's no need for people to announce that they've joined the meeting, but the agenda is available on the Commission website. It's also part of the Skype meeting if you're joining via your computer. And we'll, anyway, there will be an opportunity for the agenda item comment on items later.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, ladies, for joining. Right, so item 5 is comments or announcements. Are there any comments or announcements that any commissioner wants to make at this point under item 5?
Mr. Chair, this is Erik Vink. While commissioners might be queuing up for that, I might have missed it. I don't know if you had asked for general public comment prior. It might have been that I just was momentarily distracted.
I have not yet. I was hoping to hear from commissioners, and then I would ask for, but we wouldn't ask for public comment under that item, right? That's still under the public comment period, item 3.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just didn't know if you had covered agenda item 3 before you moved into the report on the Delta Stewardship Council activities. And my apology if you did, and there were no takers.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's my intent was to see whether or not there was any public comment, and I heard your comments. I assumed there were no additional ones. So yeah, that was my intent. All right, are there? So I'm not seeing any commissioners for any announcements or any comments. Given that's the case, then we will go to the consent.
Hello, hi. Yes, this is Joanne Jojo from SIA. We just wanted to make sure that our comments were submitted in time and they're considered.
Yeah, I believe this was one of the comments submitted on agenda item 9, having to do with the Delta Conveyance project. And if you could hold and provide your comment verbally at that time when public comment is called for, that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Also, I sent an email about 3 weeks ago to Erik Vink, I think it was Blake Roberts, and I'm hoping that could be additionally submitted. Thank you.
I'm not sure who was just speaking. You don't have to chime in, but if the chair asks for public comment for items not on the agenda, that would be the time to speak up.
Okay, I believe that's already been done under item 3, but I entered the meeting late. And this is Martha Esch, by the way.
Okay, Martha, this is Oscar. Yeah, thank you very much. Erik and Blake will take a look, make sure that they got it, and if they did not, then we'll circle back with you to make sure that gets included as part of the record.
Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you. Okay, that takes us to item 6, the consent agenda from the January 16th, 2020 meeting. This is going to require, are there any questions about the minutes? And if there isn't, we're looking for a motion. If you'll identify yourself with the motion and the second to move the consent agenda.
So moved. This is Diane.
This is Skip. I'll second. Thank you, Diane and Skip. That means, Stacy, if you can proceed with the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Villegas?
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn?
Abstain.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cott?
Yes.
Commissioner Nakanishi?
Yes.
Commissioner Paroli?
Abstain.
Commissioner Van Lobensells?
Yes.
Commissioner Kim? Oh, sorry. Commissioner McElhaney?
Yes.
Commissioner Lester Moffitt?
Abstain.
Commissioner Vogel?
Abstain.
Commissioner Bush?
Yes.
And I'm not sure if we need to ask if any other commissioners have joined since we did roll call.
Yeah, that would be good to ask if Commissioner Cabaldon or Commissioner Musi have since joined the meeting.
Commissioner Cabaldon? Making sure you're not on mute. Commissioner Cabaldon? And Commissioner Musi?
Public comment before you approve the minutes?
One moment, please. We have 9 yeses, and Mr. Chair, we have 9 yeses and 4 abstains.
Right. Is there? Okay. So yeah. So is there any public comment on? We've already voted. So are there any members of the public that want to speak on the minutes? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. The minutes show on your website as coming soon. They're not available to the public. So,
the minutes under discussion are posted on the commission website. If you could take a closer look there.
Commission meeting website. I'm looking at it. It says agenda. You can click on that and see the agenda, but it's under minutes and audio. It says coming soon, coming soon.
Please scroll down to consent agenda item number 6, and you'll be able to see the minutes there.
Thank you very much. I see them there. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if everyone could mute their microphones unless they're speaking, especially those members of the public joining the meeting. And Mr. Chair, Commission Counsel is advising that you again open up public comment opportunity for members of the public to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda.
Oh, very good. Okay, yeah, maybe that I may have quickly should that. Okay, very good. So we'll circle back. Item 3 is items that are not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission. So are there any members of the public that want to speak on items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, sir. Martha Asher from Locke, California, business owner and property owner. I would, regarding the sidewalks and fire safety concerns we have ongoing in Locke, we are hoping that the Delta Protection Commission, and we've spoken about this at a couple of your meetings, really hoping that you folks can assist with getting those major trip hazards and fire safety issues taken care of that have been ongoing for a number of years, and we're supposed to have been taken care of by the Locke Management Association. However, it seems that everyone on the Locke Association board has quit, and it should be hopefully in a state of transition, but those are major infrastructure problems that we have, and we're a tourist town, open to the public all throughout the town, and we need your help. Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, Martha. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other members of the public that want to speak on items not on the agenda? Right, I'm not hearing any. Eric, I'm assuming you're not getting signals for any?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll circle back to finish up with item 6. So Stacy, how are we doing on that, on the vote for the roll call vote for the items?
Mr. Chair, the vote was 9 in the affirmative, 0 nays, and 4 abstentions, so the motion does carry.
Very good. All right, that motion carries, so we have our minutes taken care of. That takes us to item 7. Eric, that's your Executive Director's report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members. I just want to mention a few things in my printed Executive Director report. And first, a reminder for anyone joining the meeting by telephone, and even if you're joining via Skype, all of the Commission meeting staff reports are posted on the Commission website. So if you are wondering about anything we talk about or want to take a closer look, please go to delta.ca.gov and you can access all of the materials for this meeting. I wanted to mention, Mr. Chair, that we've requested applications for the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. This is a 15-member committee that advises the Delta Protection Commission. We currently have 13 of those 15 positions whose term is expiring in May. We're requesting people to apply. Our intention is to create initial staggered terms of anywhere from 1 to 3 years with these appointments, and then subsequent reappointments or expirations of appointments, and then re-upping will be for 3-year intervals to help us create a staggered membership where we have a third of the committee up for appointment every year. We've asked potential applicants to submit by April 24th. Our intention is to bring this to the May 21st commission meeting, and at least in past times, we've worked with the chair and the vice chair in reviewing those applications, and that would be my recommendation for this upcoming round of appointments to the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. So for commission members, this is something that you should anticipate on the May 21st meeting agenda. Moving on, Mr. Chair and commission members, to a brief update on commission staffing. Our prior commission clerk, Shelley Eckler, resigned after the January commission meeting, and I want to thank our information officer, Stacy Hayden, for stepping in during this meeting. I'm sad to report that Program Manager Melinda Doran will be leaving the Commission at the end of April for a new position at the Department of Water Resources, where she'll be working on salt and sea restoration. So we'll be seeing her far from the Delta in the future, but I really appreciate, and all of the staff appreciates, her work with the Commission over the last handful of years. Another personnel announcement is that Dan Ray, who formerly was with the Delta Stewardship Council, joined us in March as a retired annuitant. He's helping us with review of the Delta Conveyance project and will be working on a limited basis with us in that assignment. And then finally, we do have student assistants that provide us great help in the office. We will wish a fond farewell to Ivy Mook, who has been with us for several years, and she's taken a job with GEI Consultants, so she's embarking on her professional career. We're very excited for her. And at the same time, we welcome James Yakolev, who joined us as a student assistant in March. Moving on to the section of my report regarding land use comment letters, I don't have anything in particular to call out, but I'm happy to answer any questions that Commission members have about the land use comment letters that the Commission has completed over the last several months. And then finally, pages 6 and 7 of the Executive Director Report includes a Commission projects update. This is a new effort to provide an ongoing update of Commission staff work that is in progress. It's a new effort for us. The format can easily change to make that more useful to Commission members, and I'd welcome any suggestions on how to improve that information. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair, unless there are any questions from Commission members.
All right, thank you for that, Erik. Are there any comments or questions by any commissioners? All right, I'm not hearing any. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much for that update, Erik. Appreciate it. Are there any members of the public that have any comments regarding the Executive Director Report? I'm not seeing any on my end, Erik. All right, well, thank you for that. That takes us to item 8, which is the DPAC report. So the DPAC chair, Mark Pruner, will present the report, including the DPAC recommendations on the Delta transportation challenges. This is an item that the Commission is being asked to adopt their recommendations. So I don't know if you need to do any introductions, Erik. Otherwise, it's all yours, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you, Commission, for support of the DPAC. We work really hard, and we try to bring only recommendations that have been well vetted, at least on our end, before asking you to consider the work that we've done and receive your comments. First of all, we had a meeting which the beginning of March, which turned out to be just before the national upheaval that we're all experiencing. And in retrospect, I'm really grateful that because of the exposure that we had to each other when we met in Walnut Grove, nothing bad happened. That was a little bit of a worry of mine in retrospect, but nothing bad happened. I want to say that in addition to the transportation report and recommendation that I'm going to touch on in a moment, Erik and Blake arranged to bring 2 visitors from they were managers or directors of other national heritage areas in the country. And we had a really good discussion, I think, with them that opened up our eyes on some of the tremendous potential that we have here in the Delta for developing and operating an incredibly beneficial and useful national heritage area. And I know that Erik and Blake could be coming forward with some of those ideas in the future. But I want to thank Erik and Blake specifically and acknowledge them for making those two experts available to us, and so we can have a great discussion with them. That was, anyway, very helpful. Moving on to the transportation plan, the commission may recall that at the last meeting I just touched on this topic a little bit, and I shared a little bit of the frustration, anecdotal stories that were coming to DPAC, whether it was the 3 Caltrans districts, which touch on the Delta, conducting projects, but it appeared to some folks on the ground that when you have a detour for one project, you might run into another place that was also blocked off because of another district's construction project, and that's just those types of incidents, while not pervasive, were leading to a little bit of frustration on the ground. And then springboarding off of what Senator Dodd and Assemblyman Frazier some time ago had suggested, the idea of having some kind of a coordinated or more unified transportation plan and system in the Delta that not only took into account the spread out rural nature of the Delta, but it's also its agricultural interests, and sometimes where those interests clash with rec and tourism, and just trying to be more organized. And then thirdly, understanding that we're moving toward a heritage area, having some kind of transportation framework or plan moving forward seemed it would really be helpful in allowing whatever the commission adopts in the management plan to move forward in a more organized and better way. And so you'll see a little bit of that, a little bit of the rationale there, as well as the specific recommendations, which are really composed of the summit, a general concept of developing better communication, and we list some examples, and then items 3 through 10 are a bit more detailed, and we would ask the commission to consider and adopt our recommendation, or if you have questions and want to send this back to the drawing board, we'd be happy to do that as well. That ends my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. Are there any comments or questions by any members of the commission regarding Mark's recommendation, or the DPAC's recommendation, Mark's presentation?
Yes, hi, this is Assemblymember Jim Frazier. Mr. Chair, through the chair, I'd just like to comment on our efforts as the Delta Assembly Member District. That we've had extensive meetings with all 3 Caltrans districts on several occasions, trying to highlight many of the issues that the advisory committee has brought forward. One of the problems we have is a turnover staff and directors that the protocols that we've been trying to get in place have not been adopted. I would hope that the commission could actually come to some kind of conclusion with some formal recommendations for legislation. So they're passed in statute that requires a consistent approach from Caltrans to recognize the Delta as because of its rural nature and a lot of the issues that take place, that it just becomes a constant going forward.
Right, okay. Any other thoughts or comments on the recommendations or the presentation?
This is Commissioner McElhenney.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Assemblymember. This is Dan McElhenney, representing California State Transportation Agency and Caltrans in this matter as well. And we certainly appreciate your leadership on these issues. We do have an executive steering committee, as I mentioned at the last meeting as well, tackling these important issues. And I do like the outline and the description, particularly the the line 4, advocate for features such as bridges and ferries, because those are a really big challenge for us as a state, and could certainly lead us to a point where we could be advising the Assembly member on some of those very specific needs there here soon. But overall, I do like the layout and the descriptions, and looking forward to working with the DPAC on it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to also, this is Jim Frazier again, I'd like to include that I also sent a letter to the Director of Caltrans asking for alternative methods for the Ryder Island ferries due to their inconsistent function, and looking forward to a response from Caltrans. I've asked for an accountability of how much has been spent to date to actually acknowledge the downtime and also money spent, so that we can actually understand if it is of value, what alternatives would be in place. Also, the bridges and the bad geometry in the Delta, looking forward to that being answered also. But again, a lot of the things that we've been addressing over several years on incidents, high accident rates and responses by Caltrans are slow in coming. And Danny, you know that for a fact. I talked to you 3 years about it, and they still don't have a protocol in place. And so I think that the Commission needs to be more assertive in their request, and possibly have legislation introduced so that it is and will become a protocol.
All right. So is the recommendation that we? And I'm going to have to ask everybody, please double check that your mute is on. If you're not speaking, we really need you to mute your phone. We're getting a lot of feedback. It's very difficult to conduct the meeting. So please check if your mute is on. Thank you. So Assembly Member, are you recommending that we make adjustments to the current recommendations coming out of the DPAC? Is that what you're looking for? You want to include or insert those suggestions as part of our recommendations? Is that what you're looking for? Or you're looking for? I mean, is it something different that you're looking for from the Commission?
No, not at all. What I'm saying is, in parallel, if the Commission can now take and adopt those recommendations, then work and drill deeper in what actually could be introduced as legislation for the things that have been addressed. That's all I'm asking. And as the Chair of Transportation, I could introduce on behalf of the Commission as an ex officio also.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. So again, we're going to have to ask folks to please check your mute. There's a lot of background noise. It's impossible to manage the meeting. Someone's hammering or doing dishes, one or the other. Thank you. All right, Assembly Member, thank you very much for those recommendations. We'll work with Erik. Erik, do you have any follow-up comments or thoughts about that and how we might be able to accommodate the request?
No, I mean, I think we're certainly happy to work with both Commissioner McElhaney as the representative from Caltrans District 10, but also with the other Caltrans districts as well, and would welcome any opportunity to also interact with Assemblyman Frazier's staff members. We appreciate the role that he plays on transportation matters statewide, and that can certainly be helpful to us in the Delta as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments or
Thank you.
Yep, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Any other Commission comments or questions regarding this item? If not, we will ask whether or not there's any public comment on this item.
Mr. Chair, this is Stacy. We do have 2 requests for public comment, the first being from Bill Wells and the second being from Nikki Stewart.
Right, Bill Wells here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I'd like to give you a little background. I'm with the California Delta Chambers Visitors Bureau. We're a nonprofit corporation. We've been supporting Delta businesses, residents, and visitors for 51 years now, half a century. recently it's brought to my attention there are Protection Commission members that have not heard of us, so we need to correct that. Somehow we're doing something wrong. We have operated on website CaliforniaDelta.org for 20 years. We've produced phone and Delta recreation maps for 40 years. Our maps are so popular, we recently auctioned one off for $40 at a mixer, a map that we paid $1 for. You find them for sale in online auctions. They're so popular. We've been producing Delta guide booklets for at least 25 years and distribute them all over the world to visitors and potential visitors. We have many media contacts that bring a lot of positive publicity to the Delta. We answer the telephone and email 7 days a week, providing knowledgeable information to boaters, people traveling by automobile. Just as a couple examples, we frequently talk to people that are lost out in the Delta in their boats, and we try to direct them. They usually call us before they call the Coast Guard. So we appreciate Mark and Erik working with us on these transportation crises. I want to emphasize there is an absolute crisis going on in the Delta. This is happening prior to the current pandemic, with the Real McCoy Ferry being down during the entire recreation season of 2019. The Three-Mile Slough bridges have been unable to open for boat traffic for months. Caltrans scheduled a Delta Transportation Summit for December 10th, 2019, which got canceled. When they canceled it, we actually asked them to move it forward, and they said they couldn't do it. So here we are in April, and nothing has been done regarding the Transportation Summit. This has been devastating to businesses, particularly on Ryder Island. Currently, traffic is reduced, but just prior to the pandemic, there were fatal accidents almost weekly on 12 and 160 in the Delta. We need to make sure we all hit the deck running when this current crisis is over. There are probably local businesses that are not going to recover from this. We feel these are matters of extreme urgency and offer our expertise to help and resolve this disaster. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Thank you for your testimony. Very, very helpful. All right, next up.
Yeah, that would be Nikki Seward if she is on the line.
Nikki, are you able to speak at this point? I don't hear her yet, so she may be having some technical difficulties, so we can come back to it if need be. All right. So with that, we are being asked to vote on the recommendation from DPAC. So we're looking for a motion in a second, unless there are any other questions.
Please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there might be others who would like to speak on this matter as well.
Oh, okay. I only had two. So, all right, very good. Is there any other public testimony on this item?
Yes, there is. It's Deirdre Desjardins. Apologies. So, the Delta levy investment strategy didn't consider protecting Highway 160, and one of the reasons was it was deferring until the future the Caltrans climate adaptation plan, or climate for the highways. And I just wanted to, there's so many problems right now, but for future planning processes, the Highway 160, Highway 12, and having a plan for those arteries is just so important. And in a crisis like this, people being able to access food locally and so on. So I just wanted to bring that to the Commission's attention. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Deirdre, and thank you for raising that issue. All right. Any other public testimony on this item?
Mr. Chair, this is not public comment. When you're done with public comment, Vice Chair Antoli.
Very good. All right. Going once, going twice for public comment. Anybody else, Erik?
No one who has identified themselves to us, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Vice Chair Antoli.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, certainly I want to thank the advisory committee for their work on this, and I think embedded obviously in the recommendations that are before us today. I guess my question is kind of regarding the specifics regarding convening a Delta Transportation Summit, and I certainly heard Assemblymember Frazier and his interest in maybe embedding some of this in legislation. But what would be the plan for that? If there's a call for that it's actually calling the commission to I guess take on that charge. So maybe Erik, you could just briefly touch on that and how that would occur and where it would occur and when potentially.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chair, you're speaking specifically to the idea of the summit meeting? Yes,
Erik. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would love to see that occur soon. Of course, we're not sure when things will more return to normal, where we can even anticipate having an in-person meeting. But I would certainly like to, start the thinking about that. At least the outline of what it would be, even without setting a particular date in mind. But hopefully, if we set it far enough out, we'll be, somewhat back to a normal ability to have in-person meetings and to conduct it the way we think it would be most effective.
Okay. Well, no, and I appreciate, obviously, the situation we're in currently. And I would just note that in that recommendation, it talks about county public works, transportation directors and officials, but I would want to include in that city public works officials as well. Again, some of these highways, state highways run through counties, but through cities, and then obviously you have all the local road networks and bridges tie in with the state transportation network. So I would want to be sure that if we're going to call a summit, that we get, as many of the folks to the table as we can that, would have an interest and certainly be a collaborative partner, hopefully, and seeing to it that we have, coordination on work and projects and outages and detours and all the various aspects of that. And secondly, I would just suggest that if we call that summit, that we would involve the California Highway Patrol and maybe some local, if there's local enforcement in the cities relative to traffic enforcement and detours. But I know that on some of the detours that have occurred with Caltrans work is during the last construction season, that we had coordination with the CHP relative to routing, but also staging potentially officers in a given area where those detours would go on more rural county and or city roads. And so I guess I would just suggest that the CHP and maybe a local law enforcement be invited to that transportation summit as well. My comments, thanks.
Very good. Are there any other comments regarding that? I love that idea. I think it's something we need to keep on the radar, despite the fact that we've downshifted multiple gears here recently. I think it's something that warrants us keeping on the radar, and as soon as we're able to, certainly surface the opportunities that exist, much like you just expressed. Are there any other comments or suggestions?
Yes,
thoughts
this is Commissioner McElhenney.
Yes, sir.
Again, on behalf of the Transportation Agency and Caltrans, we look forward to working with Commission staff and the Assemblyman's Office, the Senator's Office, of course with CHP and all of our partners and stakeholders. We could work in the near term on developing an agenda with you, Erik, and attendees, and kind of plan for later this year on the summit. I think that'll give us a chance to do a little bit of roll-up of what we know and what we need to know for the summit, and to share that at future commission meetings as we develop, the draft plan for the summit. But thank you all. Great suggestions.
Right. Very good. Any other comments by any of the commissioners? All right. So seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Pruner, and the rest of the DPAC. Assemblymember Frazier, thank you very much. So we are now looking...
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mark Pruner, one more thing. I neglected. I just want to, if I could, give a special recognition to Bill Wells, Barbara Daly, and Nikki Seward, who early on met together and provided some of the key elements to this plan that you have in front of you today. And I want to acknowledge their volunteer efforts behind this.
Of course. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. So we're now looking for a motion and a second to move the Transportation Challenge recommendations.
So moved, Natoli.
Second, Burgess.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Stacy, you've got the names. You want to do your roll call?
Okay. Chair Villegas?
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn? Making sure you're unmuted. Commissioner Wynn? If you're on the phone, you can do *6 to unmute, looking for Commissioner Wynn's vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cott?
Yes.
Commissioner Nakanishi?
Yes.
Commissioner Paroli?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Lovensells?
Yes.
Commissioner McElhaney?
Yes.
Commissioner Lester Moffitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Vogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Bush?
Abstain.
One moment. Mr. Chair, we have 12 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstain.
And yeah, Clerk Hayden, you might also ask, I don't know if we have had Commissioner Cabalden or Musi join the meeting. If they have, it would be a great time for them to chime in here.
Okay. Looking for votes, making sure you're unmuted, from Commissioner Cabalden. And looking for a vote from Commissioner Musi. Okay, so Mr. Chair, that stands the same, 12 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstain.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for that, Stacey. So that item carries. That takes care of item 8. So item 9 is, if you can turn off you can mute your phone, please, if you're not speaking. All right, item 9 is receive an update on the Delta Conveyance Project Environmental Review and Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority Stakeholder Engagement Committee. So we're going to get updates from Carrie Buckman from DWR and Kathryn Mallon from DCA, and I believe the presentations are supposed to be in that order. So, ladies, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. My name is Carrie Buckman, and I am the Environmental Program Manager for Delta Conveyance at DWR. And so the presentation that I'm going to go through is up on the screen for those who are able to see it on Skype, but it's also on the Commission's website under item 9. So if anyone wants to follow along, we are moving on to slide 2. So we have started the environmental review process for Delta Conveyance, and the purpose of the environmental review is to identify, analyze, and disclose the potential significant adverse impacts of a proposed project and provide feasible mitigation measures and alternatives to avoid or reduce such effects. So the slide that I'm showing walks through the entire environmental process under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And that starts on line 1 with the Notice of Preparation, or NOP. We released the Notice of Preparation in January of this year, and that started public scoping meetings that we held in February and early March. The public scoping period was scheduled to end on March 20th, but we had a number of requests based on the coronavirus public health situation to extend that, and we did extend it through next Friday, April 17th. So public scoping comments are on the potential environmental effects, on the potential alternatives that we could consider, and we will summarize all of the input we receive into a scoping summary report, and that will help inform an agency outreach plan on outreach that we can continue throughout the entire process. Moving on to line 2, based on the information we received during scoping, we are going to formulate alternatives and further define the project and alternatives. We'll then analyze the proposed project in the alternatives, we'll look at some of the technical aspects in a series of technical reports, and that will help inform our analysis of the environmental impacts and our efforts to identify mitigation. That information will all be combined into the draft EIR in line 3, and this will be another major opportunity for public involvement. We will release the draft EIR for public circulation and review, and then conduct public hearings to obtain feedback. And then moving on to line 4, we will be responding to any comments that we receive, and then developing a final environmental impact report and issuing a notice of determination that defines the course of action that we would take moving forward. So I think we can move on to slide 3. So as I mentioned, we released the notice of preparation, and the purpose is to document the intent to develop an EIR for the Delta Conveyance project, to trigger the start of scoping to receive comments on the scope of the analysis and alternatives, to describe the proposed project, including probable environmental effects, and provide notice about scoping meetings and how to make a scoping comment. And one thing I wanted to highlight on the bottom is that the NOP is not a decision document. We do need to include the proposed project. It's a requirement of CEQA so that the public has something to respond to and comment on. But this doesn't represent a decision on how we're going to move forward. This is the starting point of the entire evaluation that we looked at on the prior slide, and we won't be making a decision until that evaluation is complete. So moving on to slide 4. So this slide looks at the purpose and objectives of Delta Conveyance. These are the fundamental reasons that DWR is considering a Delta Conveyance project. So the purpose is to develop new diversion and conveyance facilities in the Delta necessary to restore and protect the reliability of water deliveries in a cost-effective manner consistent with the state's water resilience portfolio. And the specific objectives are to address sea level rise and climate change, minimize water supply disruption due to seismic risk, protect water supply reliability, and provide operational flexibility to improve aquatic conditions. Moving on to slide 5. The notice of preparation includes this map that describes the proposed project area. It includes the location of proposed facilities as well as areas of possible direct and indirect effects. So we are going to be looking at waterways upstream of the Delta where there could be indirect effects to the waterways. We'll be looking at the statutory Delta where construction would occur, and areas south of the Delta that may receive changes in water deliveries based on the project. And that would be the green areas that are the State Water Project service areas, and potentially the yellow areas that are the Central Valley Project service areas. Moving on to slide 6. This facilities figure is within the notice of preparation as well. And a couple of key things on this map. The facilities would include intake facilities on the Sacramento River. And the map shows 3 potential intakes, but we would only have 2 as part of the proposed project. There would then be a tunnel to convey the water to the South Delta. That would involve tunnel reaches and tunnel shafts. 4 bays, potentially an intermediate 4-bay, and then a 4-bay at the south to manage hydraulics within the tunnel, a pumping plant to pump water from the tunnel up into the southern 4-bay, and conveyance facilities in the South Delta to connect from that southern 4-bay to the State Water Project facilities and potentially the Central Valley Project facilities in the South Delta. So moving on to slide 7. The facilities map shows 2 options for the tunnel corridor. We would only be constructing one single tunnel, but it could follow either the yellow or the purple corridors on the map. The yellow corridor is similar to what was done in previous efforts for California Water Fix, and the purple corridor looks at an alignment further to the east to examine trade-offs of potentially moving the facilities in the Delta. So moving on to slide 8. The notice of preparation includes a capacity for the facility of potentially 6,000 cubic feet per second, or CFS, combined between 2 intakes of 3,000 CFS each. The NOP also identifies likely alternatives to the proposed capacity within the range of 3,000 to 7,500 CFS, but we won't be deciding on alternatives until after we've received comments on scoping. I'm moving on to slide 9. So this leads into the alternatives development. We will be selecting a reasonable range of potentially feasible alternatives that meet the project objectives and present opportunities to reduce environmental impacts. The scoping period provides an opportunity for the public to comment on alternatives, and after scoping, we will formulate alternatives based on the comments we receive and publicize the alternatives we intend to include for detailed evaluation in the EIR. Moving on to slide 10. So again, the scoping period is still open through next Friday. So there are multiple ways to comment. You can comment electronically to the Delta Conveyance scoping email address, or there's a fillable form on our website. You can send mail. And then also we have added in the last day or two an option to comment by phone. We know that some people are looking for different and new methods during this time. And so we have made it so that our phone hotline, which is on the next slide, people can call and leave their comments on that phone line, and we will consider those to be public scoping comments as well, which I think transitions to slide 11. Oh, well, I guess one more slide. So these are the scoping meetings that we conducted in February and March. We conducted 8 meetings throughout the state. And then moving on to slide 12. This is a list of ways to stay informed. Again, this project hotline will be receiving scoping comments, so if it's easier for people to call and talk through their comments, they can call and leave a message. These other ways are just good ways to stay informed of the project. The best option is to sign up for our e-blast, which is on our Delta Conveyance website. You can also keep up to date on DWR's Twitter account, and you can contact us via email at our project email. And I think with that, I can hand it over to Kathryn.
Mr. Chair, this is Don Untitled. I want to ask Carrie a quick question.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah, Carrie, so on the phone-in comments, how are folks assured that that gets recorded, and is there a confirmation number? Is there a confirmation sent via email? How do folks know, again, in some fail-safe manner, separate and apart from something that's either written or emailed, or a comment that's taken at a public hearing? How do they know that that's been registered and properly reflected?
That's a really good point. I will ask to update our hotline to leave a note that people, if they would like a receipt and a documentation of the comment, they can leave their phone or email address and we will confirm.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Of course. All right. Next up is Ms. Mallon. Kathryn, are you there? We can't hear you if you're presenting yet. Erik, are you able to help her in case she's stuck?
Well, yeah, maybe just a reminder to try *6 if somehow the phone line became muted. And alternatively, anyone can dial in to the meeting by using the dial-in number that was provided on the agenda, along with the 9-digit meeting code.
All right, so maybe what we'll do...
Yeah, Kathryn's mentioning that she's muted, so she needs to be unmuted on our end. Apologies to Kathryn, Mallon. Jason, if you're still on the meeting, Claudia, if you can text me the number where she's calling from, we'll know to unmute that in case we somehow accidentally muted that number.
This is Stacy. I believe I was able to just unmute her.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Kathryn. Kathryn, are you still with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Is the slide presentation loading?
Yes, it is loaded, Kathryn.
Okay, I can't see it on my end. It just is spinning. That's all right. I'll as long as everybody else can see it, I'll get started. So on slide 1, just to thank you for the invitation to speak about the DCA's public stakeholder process. DCA appreciates the ability to continue to get the word out on our process and hopefully encourage more people in the public to participate. Slide 2. So we started with a set of guiding principles that inform all of our engagement with the public. Our principles were built around simple concepts of sharing information in an accessible format and in a timely manner, creating avenues to receive input and being responsive to constructive input, and by extension, building trust through transparency and mutual respect. Slide 3. The basic premise of the committee is to provide a public forum to present information to a broad group of Delta constituencies, draw on their knowledge of the Delta and their particular areas of insight, whether it be recreation or terrestrial species or small businesses, and then to reflect their thoughts and ideas in our engineering documents. The committee consists of 20 members that represent a wide range of Delta interests. Each completed an application form, and the members were selected by the DCA board. We launched the committee in November and have generally been holding 2 meetings per month. Each one is about 2 to 3 hours in length. And more recently, we've shifted to monthly meetings as we've gotten through the first initial hump of introducing each of the component pieces of the program. Slide 4. This slide gives you a list of all of the members of the committee and the associated interest groups that they represent. We've included an at-large member from each of the 5 counties in the Delta, as well as several ex officio members that can provide expert advice to the committee as needed. Next slide, please. This slide shows the key members from the DCA and DWR team. What I'd like to emphasize is that the SEC is really a joint effort between the DCA and the DWR planning team, which is led by Carrie Buckman, as well as the DCA. Sarah Palmer and Barbara Keegan, who are members of the DCA board, chair this meeting, and Carrie joins me and our staff in participating in the presentations and making yourself available for question and answer exchange during these meetings. Next slide. Each meeting has a similar cadence. We start by approving the meeting minutes of the previous meeting, distribute an updated log of questions that have been asked and answered. We host a roundtable discussion of the previous meeting's topics to answer any questions that arose or to capture any feedback that was formulated. There's usually 1 or 2 technical presentations, and we try to keep these informal, pausing to answer questions as they arise, and then we close with a public comment period. And then in between meetings, there are support calls and emails that occur. And recently we've been, although it's been postponed, we've offered several tours of various facilities to help committee members understand some of the topics that are being discussed in the meeting in a more eyes-on way. Slide 7. I'd like to emphasize the effort that we put into capturing information. We prepare exhaustive meeting minutes that are nearly the dialogue verbatim. We issue a 2-page summary of each meeting within 2 days of the hosting of the meeting and get that information out on the highlights of the topics and conversations. Our meetings are all live streamed and also available on our website to watch at a later date. And we do a brief update of the SEC meeting at our DCA board meeting every month. And soon we'll be including an SEC member updating our board, speaking directly to the DCA board in our upcoming board meetings. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you some examples of the types of material that we're presenting at this meeting and give you a flavor of the types of technical exchanges that occur. Slide 9. This slide is from the intakes presentation that we did, I think, back in January, showing some basic information on how we approach the siting of the facilities. In slide 10, we have highlighted all of the sites considered with an explanation on how the most favorable sites were selected. These are examples of how we want the public to have insights of what we looked at and how our sites were selected, and then open the door for comments on where we may have missed something or could look at the siting with other considerations in mind. Next slide. This figure provides an example of how we try to show scale to the committee, which is often hard to discern from drawing sometimes. So in this case, we overlaid the existing Freeport intake on the proposed Delta conveyance intake structure, so they could get a sense of the scale and the size of the intake that's being proposed. Slide 12. Here's an example of how we try to highlight some key effects from the construction. In this case, it's the noise levels from potential pile driving at the intake sites. In this case, we've showed what the impacts of a mitigation, noise mitigation measure might have to attenuate the noise effects. So again, the things that have the most, that we perceive to have the greatest effects on the community around there, we try to make sure that we highlight that. Slide 13. This is an example of using renders to help people understand what is going on at a particular construction site. In this case, this is a typical launch shaft site. There's also a high-level summary of the construction schedule that includes all of the key activities that would occur at the site in a time scale. So in this case, over about a 10-year construction period, the key activities that will be occurring over the years. Next slide. The last two slides are examples of providing more detailed insights into some of our siting methodologies. In this particular slide, we're conveying the methodology that we used in selecting tunnel launch shaft sites. And then on the next slide, slide 15, is the application of that methodology on evaluating a range of sites. In this case, it's the ranking of sites for locating the most northerly launch shaft for the central corridor alternative from the NOP. So again, just some examples of how we're trying to create transparency around how we think about where sites are located and what's happening on that site in terms of facilities and construction timescales and some of the critical construction impacts that the local community or environment might have as a result of the activities at that site. Next slide. So just before I take questions, I just wanted to speak a little bit about some of the adaptations that the DCA has made in light of the current constraints on public meetings, and something that we've all thought about. We've been in very close contact with the SEC members on the committee, and there's significant support to continue to move forward using the AV technology. We've been conducting tests with each of the members, and they all seem comfortable and prepared for our upcoming meeting on April 22nd. And we also know, based on our experience of our last DCA board meeting that was held with live video conferencing technology just a couple weeks ago, we actually had greater participation in that meeting than we have in the last 12 months. So there seems to be some indication that the remote participation may be an effective tool in expanding the audience that we can reach and engage. So we'll also be using this time to launch some additional social media tools such as Facebook and Twitter, and that'll help expand our capacity to both deliver and receive information from the public. So again, just examples of how we'd like to adapt to best practices that are out there, take advantage of all the tools that exist to both convey information and receive feedback, and hopefully expand the number of people that we can access during this time period. So with that, I'm open to any questions or clarifications you may have from the presentation.
All right, thank you, Carrie and Kathryn, for that presentation. I know we have some questions from the public, but before we go to public comment, are there any questions or comments from any of the commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Don Natoli.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Kathryn. This is Don Natoli. I have just on your last summary about how you're expanding the public outreach. I think commission members are in receipt of a letter comment, but I know I've seen similar letters, and actually one of the committee members from the SEC requesting that until such time as we resume more normal meeting approaches, that comment periods and agency hearings, particularly with the DCA, be continued. How have you responded? I took from your comments, it sounded like you had pretty much agreement amongst your SEC members, but at least one member has reached out. I think others have. I've seen letters from other entities as well asking the same. So I guess I'm curious about the response, your response, or obviously the DCA's response to that.
So there has been one member who's has expressed the need to back away from participating because she's got medical issues in her family that she needs to deal with. So she may still participate on April 22nd. I'm not quite sure. We're gonna leave that door open. The other members have they've had a positive response. So we'll see. I'm hopeful.
How can I talk?
You'll need if that's public comment. We're not finished with commission questions, and then we'll go to public comment. So please hold on.
Well, and I'll just say that may be Melissa wanting to weigh in from the public side of it, but again, I've seen letters from Restore the Delta, and I think other public agencies have asked as well, and again, I know that some of the scoping hearings of the NOP, particularly the one that I was in attendance at in Walnut Grove, that's as full as I've ever seen that room, with people who showed up to weigh in on the environmental aspects of the scoping. But my point being here is that it was made to sound like that, and now even your response to me is like only one member objects, and that may be the case or not. But I guess I'm concerned for something that will have such a lasting effect, and certainly of the magnitude of what we're talking about here, not to take anything away from work continuing while we're in the midst of this crisis. I guess the commission's been asked, certainly through this commentary, but I've seen other requests to weigh in, and then obviously our role as Delta Protection Commission members has that slant to it. So I guess I asked that is that Twitter and Facebook are all well and fine and help people to communicate and to follow things, but it's not the same as having meetings in person and certainly doing the work that's been called upon here. So again, I don't want to diminish the input of either one or maybe other parties as it relates to the comments about maybe suspending some of the activities, at least until we're through this crisis to a degree where we can actually convene folks versus doing it telephonically. So that's my point. Thanks.
All right. Very good. Any other commission members have any comments?
Yeah, this is Diane. I agree with Don. I think we don't need to rush through this, and I think that to have credible input is to give some time for us to be able to do that. At the same time, we're dealing with this crisis right now.
Well said. Any other comments?
Can the public comment?
Yeah, I'm going to go to public.
I have one too.
Confirming that there are no other commission member comments or questions.
Hi,
right.
Can you hear me?
And Mr. Chair, we do have people who had requested to comment. I'd suggest that you recognize those individuals first, and I can read those names.
Erik, do me a favor. Why don't you list the folks off who are listed to speak under public comment, and we'll take the comments in the order that they're that you identify them, so that way they know when they're up. I don't have that list.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first comment would be from Melissa Tayaba, followed by Jane.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. We can. Followed by James Sarmento. I believe he wanted to comment. If not, that's fine. And then followed by Joanne Jojo Lee. And then at that point, Mr. Chair, I recommend you ask if there are any other additional public comments. But these were the people who submitted requests as had been requested, and we recommend you recognize them first.
Very good. So in order to proceed, if I can remind everybody, please keep your phones muted unless you're speaking. So go ahead, Melissa. You got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melissa Tayaba, Director of Traditional Ecological Knowledge for Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. I'm also a tribal member. I'm also a SEC member. I am the representative of tribes, specifically all Delta tribes. And I think all tribes feel the same way and want postponement. We request that all hearings, meetings, and public comment periods related to the Delta Conveyance project be postponed until the current national COVID-19 health pandemic is over. At a time when lives are being lost, people are sick and caring for sick loved ones, cities in sheltering in place, counties and tribal governments have shut down, Californians are losing their jobs, and the citizens of our state grapple with this very real and frightening crisis. We feel that true public engagement as well as meaningful consultation with tribes cannot be adequately accomplished under these unprecedented circumstances. At the federal level, on April 1st, 14 House committee chairs wrote a letter to the Office of Management and Budget requesting an immediate extension of public comment periods, hearings and meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic, urging that OMB direct agencies to extend public comment periods by at least 45 days beyond the end of the declared national emergency. We encourage California to do the same. If not all agency hearings, meetings, and public comment periods can be postponed or extended, then we'd like to request that at the very least the Delta Conveyance project be postponed. For the record, we have already made this request for postponement directly to DWR and the DCA. To no avail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa, for your comments. I think many of us share those sentiments, and I believe the Delta Counties Coalition has also provided correspondence to Secretary Crowfoot regarding the same. So thank you for your comments this afternoon. All right.
Thank you.
So James, I believe you're next.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can now. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Okay, perfect. I actually just want to, really, I'm just going to echo the same thoughts that Melissa had just stated. A large part, literally going to read the same statement that she was. I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to make the call or not. So I'm going to yield whatever time I have and sort of echo the same thoughts that she had. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, James. Joanne, you're next. Joanne, did you have a comment? Erik, is it possible that she's stuck on mute as well?
Yes, I do. I'm on the phone with my colleague as well. Sorry, we're trying to get the letter up. 1 second.
Hi, my name is Paul Sedano. I'll be speaking on behalf of the California Indian Environmental Alliance. Dear Delta Protection Commissioners, our comments are related to the continuance and acceleration of the planning, design, permitting, and process of the Delta Conveyance project. We request that the Delta Protection Commission join the California Indian Environmental Alliance to insist that the California Natural Resources Agency, the Department of Water Resources, the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, and all related entities suspend all Delta Conveyance project planning, permitting, and project-related actions during the duration of the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic emergency. In light of the recent COVID-19 pandemic, we are asking that all planning and action items related to the Delta Conveyance project be suspended until regular planning and meetings can take place. once the COVID-19 virus shelter-in-place order has been lifted via Governor Gavin Newsom. To move forward at this time does not constitute a good faith effort of engagement, and it will not allow for true, meaningful tribal engagement or engagement from the general public. It is our understanding that similar requests have been advanced to DWR and other agencies by multiple California tribes, nonprofits, and community-based organizations, and that these requests have to date only resulted in an extension of the comment deadline for the scoping period for the Delta Conveyance project to April 17, 2020. Since that time, the shelter-in-place order has been extended past that deadline to April 30th, 2020. At the same time, we are alarmed that the following activities are listed in the Item 9 staff report are still continuing without proper public participation. The Delta Conveyance Environmental Impact Report, Notice of Preparation, and related environmental review documents, Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority and Stakeholder Engagement Committee, and the Water Resilience Portfolio. According to AB 52, the state is required to invite and engage in consultation with tribes regarding tribal cultural resources. We understand that tribes have been invited to engage in consultation before this pandemic, and that tribes were just beginning to initiate that process with the expectation that meaningful consultation could take place early in the planning process and would include basic tenets of consultation. It is our understanding that tribes have not agreed to the advancement of this project or deliberated with state agencies about what assurance needs to be in place. We are acutely aware that the process to arrive at agreements through consultation cannot continue meaningfully under existing COVID-19 conditions. Our request is about priorities and perspectives. The vast majority of the California public is focused on surviving and coping with personal and social health and economic effects of the spread of COVID-19, the disease caused by transmission of the COVID-19 novel coronavirus. At this time, key decision makers for many tribal communities are focused on keeping their family members and elders protected from this virus. We know that meaningful stakeholder engagement and tribal consultation cannot happen while we are worried about survival of ourselves and for our loved ones. Continuing the planning process and action during this time reflects negatively on state and federal levels of government. By agencies moving forward, California is sending a message that our state disregards the existence of tribal peoples and the lives of community members in general by using this deadly pandemic as an opportunity to move forward. This is not the message that the state of California and its agents should be promoting. Instead, the state should allow families to focus on physical safety and reinitiate the process when meaningful participation is possible. Public outreach and input is essential to ensuring that the state is held fully accountable as it proceeds with planning the Delta Conveyance project. An example and an activity of this project that should not move forward during this pandemic includes a seemingly pro forma action by DWR to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. DWR has requested a state of no objection to signal the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Sacramento to proceed with the Corps' 408 levee protection assurance process in relation to this project. To advance this request without clear explanation or notice to the public at this time is unacceptable. The state should further cease actions because shifts to our priorities for Delta protection and regional budgets may be necessary after the full impacts of the pandemic have been evaluated. It is short-sighted to allow this high-profile project to advance at this time. These are significant public agency decisions that should not be made without public and tribal participation when California is under a statewide shelter-in-place order for social and physical distancing for health and safety of California families. Please join us in recommending that activities for the advancement of the Delta Conveyance project cease until public and tribal participation can resume fully. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Erik, do you have any other public comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we have a speaker from the United Auburn Indian Community of the Auburn Rancheria, and either Matthew Moore or Rebecca Allen. One of the two is having phone challenges, but I hope one of them is able to speak now.
Okay.
This is Rebecca Allen, and I'll speak for the tribe. I would like to reiterate everything that we just heard from our other tribal members, as well as the California Indian Environmental Alliance. I would also hope that the Department of Water Resources and DCA is truly committed to meaningful tribal consultation. This postponement is critical. We can't overstate the impact that such a dramatic change in water conveyance and water supply that this project will cause. such a dramatic project should be undertaken in the best of circumstances. It should not be hidden in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Eric, do you have any other?
The only other request we received was from Anna Swenson.
Hi, this is Anna Swenson, and I am a county of I live in the town of Clarksburg, and I am an SEC member who represents Leguillo County at large. I too have made many requests to please postpone the SEC meetings. At this time, it's incredibly difficult with my 5 children now being schooled remotely and trying to work from home remotely, and all of the other stresses of taking care of my elderly mother and trying to even go to the grocery store can be challenging in these times, and yet it's all fallen upon deaf ears. I was kind of horrified to hear Kathryn say that there has been unanimous support to move forward with these meetings when I know that I'm not the only one who has, under the type of stress that we're under. And the whole purpose of my position on SEC is to reach out to my community and to talk with them about the project and to make sure that they understand what is being proposed, and there's no opportunity to do that. So I don't really understand why we would move forward when the whole purpose is for us to reach out to our communities and to actually do engagement when knowing proper or meaningful engagement can be achieved at this time. And I really encourage the Delta Protection Commission to please support us, at this very stressful time, and to recommend that they postpone these. There's no significant reason to continue this process, and to postpone it would be the only right thing to do to actually protect the process by which we are in charge. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Anna.
This is Sarah Palmer. Hi, this is Sarah Palmer. I just did a *6, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, great. Hi. Full disclosure, I'm on the DCA board, Sarah Palmer, and part of the thinking in terms of not going ahead quite as rapidly. I mean, I realize we're all under the same thing. I mean, I'm in the vulnerable group. I'm old, so it's nearing 70, so that's it. But we're all experiencing this, and I do appreciate everybody's stress levels. One of the things that we were proposing and thinking about as we were discussing this with various board members, again, without going past the Brown Act, but is that, people don't, we were giving people like assignments, like think about this, talk to your constituents about different things, and we're not really doing that at this point because we realize that it isn't really necessary. Also, something to keep in mind in that looking at some of the issues and continuing education about these issues doesn't mean the project itself is going forward. Basically, what we would like to be able to do is that when we are over this horrendous situation that we're in right now, that we are ready to move forward and ready to provide jobs, ready to be shovel ready at some point, or at least get more input from the SEC members. Remember that, again, we're not DWR. We're not saying what the project should be. We're having the time to think deeply about this. And personally, I've found that this has been a very introspective time in terms of thinking about some of the different water issues and some of the impacts of climate change and infrastructure needs. And we are going to be coming out of this COVID-19 crisis, and we will soon be in another crisis in terms of climate change, in terms of infrastructure falling apart. And as we've already been aware, it takes so long to go through and get people to think about things and come to an idea. So I just encourage everyone to seriously think about what's next. We have to think about what's next and where we're going from here. And I don't think that completely putting a stop to planning, not doing the project, but planning the project would serve anyone, especially since climate changes levee failures, those are going to be new crises coming up, or present day crises that are coming up that we have to consider and address. And thanks for listening to me on this.
Of course, thank you, Ms. Palmer, for your comments.
I would like
to.
Could we respond to that? This is Rebecca Allen.
Hold on a second.
Waiting to speak. I'm an SEC member.
I understand.
We're
trying to take these in. Hold on 1 second, please. Erik, do we have other folks who registered to provide public comment?
No, there was no one else who had requested to provide public comments. It would be appropriate to open it up for others who wish to comment at this time. Mr. Chair.
Erik, may I speak? This is Cecile Giacomo. I'm an SEC member, Public Safety for Sacramento County.
Go ahead.
I echo the statements of the first three people. I'm horrified to hear Sarah Palmer say that it's not important that we relay the comments of our constituents, or that we receive information from those very people who are most affected by this project. This is crazy to go forward, roll forward, do this sales pitch as she just did on going forward when we're all worried about life and death issues. Where I am right now, we have a serious uptick in crime. We're having a real big problem down here because of what's going on with the quarantine. People are piling in here. We're unable to control it. We have no law enforcement. There are myriad issues such as that related to the COVID-19 quarantine. It's extremely important that we respect that quarantine. I thank Mr. Natoli for speaking up for the stakeholders that live in the Delta. They are not supporting this. I went to 3 different scoping meetings, and the public attended en masse and were adamantly against and made very excellent points. And all of that has been treated as if it doesn't matter. And I heard that reflected in Sarah Palmer's statement also. Let us look at what really matters right now, which is the lives and safety of the citizens of the area. We can take up this project when this pressure is off. This isn't going to go on forever. But as long as the governor has called for quarantine, let us respect that. It's extremely important. It's much more important than this project. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, this is Sarah Palmer. Again,
No, Ms. Palmer, we're not going to go back and forth. So I apologize for that.
Okay, I understand.
Yes, understood. Thank you very much for your comment.
I wasn't minimizing the importance. Thank you.
Understood. No, fair enough. I can appreciate that as well. So, Erik, do we have anybody else signed up for public comment?
No one that we're aware of, Mr. Chair, but there might be people on the phone.
There is someone on the line. Deirdre Desjardins.
Deirdre, go ahead.
Desjardins.
Deirdre, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say there is a structural issue with the Delta Stakeholder Engagement Committee. Each of the members is appointed by the DCA and can be removed at any time by the DCA and for no reason. It intimidates the members. It is not an appropriate engagement. The staff, it communicates extensively with the members and in a way that is non-transparent. This is an example of those communications. I believe that a decision to go forward should be made fully transparently under the Brown Act by a vote, recorded vote of the SEC members, and not with Kathryn Mallon representing what they said. This is an example of how the spirit, if not the letter, of the Brown Act should apply. Number 3, the Stakeholder Engagement Committee asked each member to fill out a feedback guidance form. Supposedly these forms were representing the opinions of their constituents. I've found that their constituents have no idea what was put on those forms. And the DCA has refused to publish the forms or put them on the website, although we've repeatedly asked. Members of the public, such as myself and others, that declined to apply for or be on the committee because of its inappropriate structure, do not have their questions answered by the committee members and are not responded to, and do not provide input. The Delta Stakeholder Engagement Committee process, it's become clear the schedule is driven by the conceptual engineering schedule for the DPA, and that is that the tunnels and shaft design is supposed to be finished in May, and the intake conceptual design is supposed to be finished in August. And this is what's driving this. There is a large amount of the design is put forward. The intakes, which have major impacts on the Delta Legacy community, it was just announced that we decided that the 3 locations for the water fix were the best possible locations. And that was it. And Kathryn Mallon told the Stakeholder Engagement Committee members, we're not going to discuss this anymore. It's a regulatory decision by Fish and Wildlife. And the question was asked, where's CEQA for the decision by Fish and Wildlife? And it came out, well, there is no CEQA. And the fact is, the intakes also have major issues for fish. I provided testimony in the water fix hearing, and I'm working closely with the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance. I believe that whole intake design just won't work. They're just too large for the tidal location. The proposed bypass flows are too low, and yet this is rushing forward. So I think the whole stakeholder, this is an example, the whole Stakeholder Engagement Committee is failing. You're not listening to them even about rushing forward.
I'll need you to wrap up here.
Yeah, they're not listening about rushing forward during the pandemic, but they're not listening about alternatives. And I really would request that people think about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Erik, do you have any other public requests to speak?
No one who has identified, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very, very good. So we'll go ahead and close off the public comment portion of that item. I've heard some very compelling.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but it's possible that there are others on the phone who did not notify us, but it probably would be appropriate to ask if there are any others who would like to provide public comment at this time.
Okay, is there any other public testimony? All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask the Commission to chime in on what I think we've heard, which is obviously some very compelling testimony by the last half dozen speakers or so. Are there thoughts? I know I certainly have some, but I want to hear from the rest of the commissioners if there is a consensus around any staff direction at this juncture. Not hearing any. I'm going to go ahead and offer, and I'd like others to chime in. Obviously, we have not scheduled this for an item for vote. I think we can do this, Erik, and if I can get some guidance on whether or not it's appropriate. But I certainly, for one, feel that for all the reasons that have just been provided in the last half hour, that it would be incumbent upon the Delta Protection Commission to certainly request, and I don't think there's a date that we can ask for other than to simply say it requires that we ask for a timeout in relation to many of these items that are moving forward whether they're moving forward in reality or whether they're simply moving forward in a paper shuffle style. Regardless, I think at this time we need to focus on what the governor himself has repeatedly said, which is, we need to shelter in place, and we need to think about how we can lean into an environment that we could not have imagined. And so I guess what I'm asking for, Erik, is if you can craft language and correspondence rather quickly to request that we, on behalf of the residents of the Delta and the voice of the Delta, that we are asking the respective agencies to suspend the work that they are doing until such time as folks can feel comfortable getting back into the mix, because I think there are things that are pressing at this juncture that require it.
Mr. Chair, this is Skip. If I may jump in before Erik gives his comments.
Of course. Go ahead, Skip.
I couldn't agree with all of the comments from the speakers, your comments, Mr. Chair. I mean, here we go again. We got to rush this thing through before the public really has an opportunity. And to your point, the governor said, we don't want large gatherings. We don't want people doing anything except if they can staying at home. So this really numbs the public comment process, and it really muzzles those that have a different perspective of what the conveyance should look like, or if it should even be an option. So I agree with you, Mr. Chair, and the speakers. We should be writing a letter to the DCA sharing our extreme concerns, and also reminding them of the governor's position about stay at home. So anyway, those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Skip. Are there any other comments from members of the
Mr. Chair, Untitled. I would just say I concur with you, Mr. Chair, and certainly with Skip and the speakers that have spoken that for something as important as this, that I think we need to stand up as the voice, as you just said a moment ago, and express that, and certainly, I think summarize the comments certainly by our tribal communities, but the community of Delta and the voices we've heard. And again, it's not to ignore, obviously, processes that call for certain input, but those are all suspendable. And I think back to the point that Skip just made, that if folks are being basically asked to stay at home to look out for their welfare and the welfare of their families and those around them, until such time as we return to more normal routines, but also give the opportunity for true engagement. I concur wholeheartedly with what you said, Mr. Chair, and with the other comments here, and that we ought to have a letter that conveys that very clearly to the governor, in a position of making a decision regarding that. Thanks.
Hello, this is Alan Nakanisi.
Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. I agree with you. I came to this commission thinking this meeting would be short. We should spend. The major issue is COVID-19 at the city council. That's my first priorities. Here at this meeting, I agree with you, Don Natoli, the chairman, what they're going to. I'll support that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Well, hearing none. Erik, are you comfortable with how we're wrapping up this item?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Erik Vink. Just maybe one clarification, because it is worth noting that the request has been to have telephone meetings. My own feeling is that even a telephone meeting is very challenging with the level of detail and the information that's being presented in these stakeholder engagement committees. I've been to those meetings in person. I've participated in those meetings as a remote participant. It's challenging to really, truly follow what's happening unless you're in that room and you're seeing what people are pointing to. I mean, so much of it is based on illustrations and maps and things that people are continually pointing to. And I think it's very challenging to have a meeting with that level of detailed information when you're doing it through remote means. My own hope is that the Stakeholder Engagement Committee members will, indicate that they are not willing to participate while this crisis is in place. I think we've heard from several of those members during public comment on this item, and I suspect there are others as well that are in that category. So I have no problem, Mr. Chair and Commission members, communicating that, we believe that these meetings, not because, not because, they're not public meetings, they're telephone meetings, but really because the telephone meetings and the remote meetings, it's very difficult to do this complicated, detailed information justice. That would be my argument for postponing.
So here's what we'll do, Erik. You and I and the Vice Chair Natoli will work to craft some language, unless the rest of the Commission has concerns about that. If not, that's what we'll do, and then we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of what we come up with. Is everybody okay with that?
That works for me.
Very good. All right. So that'll be the case. Unless there are no other comments on that item, that's item 9. That'll take us to item 10, which is the Delta National Heritage Area. So Erik, you want to maybe have Blake briefly go through this one, because we're way behind, and I think folks have other items pressing up against the clock here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me ask Blake Roberts, our lead on Delta National Heritage Area efforts, to step in and give a brief update. We are asking for Commission approval of 2 separate items, but we're advised that they can be combined into a single motion for Commission consideration.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chair Villegas and members of the Commission. My name is Blake Roberts, and I am the Senior Environmental Planner with the Commission and Coordinator for the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area. Today I will provide a update on the National Heritage Area and ask for Commission action on 2 items. Commission staff are currently working on the preparation of the National Heritage Area Management Plan. Our contractor, Point Heritage Development Consulting, visited the area in early March, luckily before distancing measures were in force. Their team traveled throughout the Delta and the National Heritage Area and met with Chair Villegas and Vice Chair Natoli. Mark had mentioned earlier that they met with the Delta Protection Advisory Committee, also met with local business owners and advocates, local National Park Service staff, and East Bay Regional Park staff. They are currently working on a summary of best management practices for national heritage areas, project charters for components of the management plan, and the communications plan. The Commission is also preparing a contract for preparation of the interpretive section of the management plan. So the first action item is revising the cooperative agreement with the National Park Service. At the January meeting, the Commission delegated authority to the Executive Director to sign a cooperative agreement with the National Park Service for work in federal fiscal year 2020 for an amount up to $300,000. This amount was determined based on $150,000 of federal funding, matched by $150,000 of commission and community funding and in-kind services. Since that time, staff learned that the Commission would be receiving $154,291 from the National Park Service, which is $4,291 more than we initially expected. Thus, staff are recommending that the Commission increase the amount of delegated authority from $300,000 to $308,582. After Commission consideration of this revision, we will work with the National Park Service to finalize the cooperative agreement. The second action item is a letter of support for National Heritage Area program legislation. There's currently no comprehensive National Heritage Area legislation for the country's 55 National Heritage Areas. Recent legislation in both the House and Senate would change this by creating an NHA system with uniform standards for designation, funding, and management. Co-sponsors for the House bill include virtually all the members of the House within the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area. Staff is recommending that the Commission approve a letter of support for Senate Bill 3217 and House Resolution 1049. Thank you for your time. We appreciate your consideration of these two action items.
All right. Are there any questions of Blake's presentation? All right. No questions at the moment. So, Erik, do you have any public requests to speak on this item?
We have no requests submitted prior to the meeting that there might be others on the phone wishing to speak.
Okay. Any public testimony on this item?
Yes.
Not
this
hearing.
Is Rebecca Allen.
Yes,
this
Rebecca.
is Rebecca Allen with the United Auburn Indian Community. I would simply ask that you commit also to working with tribes in the designation and recognition of this heritage corridor.
Yeah, I think that's actually built into the work plan. Erik, did you want to speak to that?
Absolutely, it is, and we look forward to engaging with tribal representatives. We know that there are many that touch this region that's included within the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area, and I appreciate the comment from Ms. Allen. We will look forward to following up with both her and with the other tribal representatives that are interested in this geography covered by the NHA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public testimony on this item? All right, hearing none. So I did check with council. So because there are two items here, I'm going to go ahead and just read the suggested language. So items 10A and 10B, the proposed motion is to authorize the executive director to accept additional National Heritage Area federal funding and to state the Commission's support for H.R. 1049 and S. 3217 proposed federal legislation concerning the natural heritage areas. So we're looking for a motion to move those two items.
This is Brian Bush. I move staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Is that Skip?
Yep.
All right, Brian, Skip, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. So I believe we got to do a roll call vote again. Stacy, go ahead.
Okay. Chair Villegas?
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn? Double checking to make sure you're off of mute. We're looking for a vote from Commissioner Wynn.
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cott?
Yes.
Commissioner Nakanishi?
Yes.
Commissioner Paroli? Making sure you're unmuted. We're looking for a vote from Commissioner Paroli. Moving forward, Commissioner Van Lobensel's. Making sure you're off mute. We're looking for a vote from Commissioner Van Lobensel's. Moving forward, Commissioner McElhaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester Moffitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
and I think since we did for the other votes as well, we'll just check again. Commissioner Cabalden and Commissioner Musi. Okay, one moment, please. Mr. Chair, I have 11 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstains.
All right, very good. Thank you, Stacy. That item carries. That's item 10. So then item 11 is commission letter on restoring Delta levies maintenance subvention program funding and proposed fiscal year 21 or 2021 and state budget. So I know some things have changed. Erik, you want to briefly just explain what that is and what the changes will be going forward?
Yes, Mr. Chair. When this item was drafted, initially in reviewing the governor's proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021, it was noted by many Delta levy interests that there was no funding included for the Delta levies maintenance subventions program. Commission members know that this is a program that's highly prized throughout the Delta region. It's been the subject of recommendations from the Commission before, both to ensure the continuation of the program and adequate funding. Subsequent to that, in communications to a group called the Delta Levies Habitat Advisory Committee, which consists of DWR personnel, local levy interests, including levy engineers and individual reclamation district members, it was conveyed that the department believed it had funding from prior fiscal years that it could commit to the levy subvention program for the upcoming fiscal year. When this staff report that went out to the Commission was drafted, the commitment was for $10 million. Subsequent to that, there was a formal communication to the Levies Habitat Advisory Committee indicating that DWR now believes it has $12 million of prior appropriated money that it can devote to levy maintenance subvention program in the upcoming fiscal year. That's within the range that the Commission has always recommended. Most recently, the Commission included recommendations for DWR levy program funding when we transmitted the levy financing feasibility study in 2018. And at that time, the Commission's recommendation was that annual funding for levy maintenance subventions should be in the $12 to $15 million range. So we now have a stated commitment from DWR to provide that funding in the upcoming fiscal year, again from previously appropriated money. The Delta Special Projects Program, which also provides support to improve Delta levies and actually improves Delta levies as opposed to just maintains and rehabilitates Delta levies. That program, there is a DWR funding commitment for that program of approximately $10 million. The Commission recommendation is for a much higher amount than that, anywhere from $30 to $60 million annually. The draft letter that was included in the Commission member packet was really drafted when we believed that DWR was still anticipating a lower level of levy maintenance subvention funding. I'm comfortable that that issue has now been resolved, and levy interests throughout the Delta share that appraisal. The governor's, the DWR commitment to the Special Projects Program is still lower than what the Commission, our Commission, has recommended in the past. So the letter that's included within the Commission meeting packet would be appropriate if there is Commission concern about the level of funding for the DWR Special Projects Program. The letter is not really necessary any further for the levy maintenance subvention program funding, but it is also useful for us to be communicating to the respective chairs of the budget subcommittees in both the Assembly and the Senate of our support for these programs, if there's a desire by the commission to adopt the letter that's included in the commission member packet, I would certainly recommend amending that letter to indicate that the DWR funding commitment has increased for subventions, while at the same time acknowledging that the funding commitment for special projects is below the level that the commission has supported on different occasions. So, Mr. Chair and commission members, that's kind of a long, ambling route, but my recommendation is that you do approve the draft letter with the amendment related to the additional commitment of funding for the levy subvention program, and that we would transmit that to the budget subcommittee chairs in both the Senate and Assembly. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this.
All right, thank you, Eric. So are there any comments or questions by members of the commission? Seeing no comments or questions, Eric, do you have any requests to speak on this item?
We did not.
You did not. All right. Well, it sounds like, so that's a good thing. I mean, it sounds like the letter would require a slight amendment. I mean, obviously we want to thank them for increasing the funding. So with your recommended, their support, we would send the letter with your recommended amendments recognizing the increase in funding. Is there a motion, because you're looking for a vote, right, Eric? This one would require a roll call vote as well?
Yes, I would, all of our votes do require a roll call, and I would appreciate commission support for this action.
Very good. All right, so Eric, looking for our support.
Mr. Chair, this is Stacy. We should make sure that there's nobody on the phone who wants to make comments.
Very good. Thank you for that, Stacy. Is there anybody on the phone that wanted to make a comment regarding the commission letter? I don't hear any, so go back to the commission for looking for a motion and a second.
So moved. This is Burgess.
All right, Burgess, thank you. All right, well, if nobody else, I'll second. This is Villegas. So we have a motion and a second. Stacy, you want to do the roll call?
Okay, Chair Villegas.
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli. Vice Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn.
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cott. Making sure you're off mute and looking for a vote from Commissioner Cott. Moving forward, Commissioner Nakanishi.
Yes.
Commissioner Paroli.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Lobensells. Just making sure you're off mute and double checking for a vote from Commissioner Van Lobensells. Commissioner McElhaney.
Yes.
Commissioner Lester Moffitt.
Aye.
Commissioner Vogel.
Abstain.
Commissioner Bush.
Yes.
One moment, please. Mr. Chair, I have 10 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstained.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy, for that work. And so that item carries forward. Thank you all. I also want to just one more time thank the public for joining us. Thank all the staff for all the extra work that goes into putting a meeting like this together. We had some glitches, and I think we'll get it ironed out certainly before our next meeting, which is currently scheduled for May 21st. likely to be electronically. Hopefully, maybe we'll get access to some Zoom that's a little bit easier to manage large groups. That's something I've used and it works a little bit better. But in either case, I wanted to thank all of the commissioners for their patience and for working with us through all of it. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Oscar.
Thank
Good job.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.